Bingo! Here we are, 12 o'clock block, restaurants of Hawaii, with the executive director of the Hawaii Restaurant Association, Sheryl Matsuoka, and also Chivon Garcia, who is like what? Assistant to Sheryl? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the show. And special today for our special show about vaccines and restaurants and the Employers Council, a lawyer, Emily Marr. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you all here today. So as usual, Sheryl, could I ask you to scope out our discussion?
Yes, Jay, thank you so much for having Hawaii Restaurant Association on ThinkTech. You know, the conversation is always relevant and current. Today, we're discussing vaccines. As all the vaccines has been rolling out, the Hawaii Restaurant Association really was encouraging our governor and mayor to sign that we were 1C. We all started getting our vaccines as of March 15th. Today's April, what is it, the 6th? And so we've been all rolling out vaccines in all the restaurants. As we're rolling out all the vaccines, encouraging all of our employees to take vaccines, Jay, there's pushback. And I get it. You know, as I mentioned on another call, you know, my sister has underlying conditions, and my sister can't even take a flu shot because of the condition she has. You know, she has an autoimmune disease, so she will not be able to take the COVID vaccine, according to her doctor. I know a couple of people who are taking chemo right now, chemotherapy, they won't be able to. So I understand there's reasons why. And then there's religious reasons, Jay, why people won't take the vaccine. So what does an employer do?
And there's political reasons too.
And there's political reasons. And what does an employer do, especially a restaurant who's trying to create a very safe environment for their patrons, Jay? You know, we want to assure our patrons that restaurants are safe and to come back and dine with us. So today the conversation is with Emily, who we really are grateful that she took the time to jump on with us to give us some guidance.
Okay, Emily, I'm a restaurant owner. I may play different roles in this discussion, but for now, at the inception, I'm a restaurant owner. What is your advice to me?
Well, so one of the things that we do at the Hawaii Employers Council is educate employers on what to do. So if you came to me as a member of the Hawaii Employers Council and said, what do I do if I want my employees to be vaccinated? The first bit of advice I would give to you is to educate. Employers really play a huge role in educating their workforce about the vaccine, the role it will play in the workplace. And a lot of our employers are actively involved in educating their workforce about the vaccine. The Hawaii Employers Council did a survey in March, so just last month, where we surveyed 113 members of the Hawaii Employers Council, including some restaurants, and asked them questions like, you know, do you intend to mandate the vaccine? And overwhelmingly, the answer was no. Instead, what employers are choosing to do is to educate. Now, as Sheryl mentioned, there has been some pushback. Not everyone wants the vaccine for a variety of
But
reasons.
Emily, you say educate. You said that a couple of times. Educate them in what way?
Sure.
Tell them something. What are you suggesting they be educated about or on?
Well, I think that, you know, what the role the vaccine is going to be playing in terms of the workplace, what the employer wants. So messaging what the employer wants to convey to its workforce. Do they support the vaccine? And there are so many ways the employer can signal to its workforce, we support the vaccine. They can offer incentives. A lot of employers are choosing to incentivize getting vaccines. They can offer time off. Under the recently passed American Rescue Plan Act, there is an option for employers to even get tax credits if they offer time off for taking the vaccine.
Oh, good. Okay. So that would be the education of the employer. The education by the employer of the employee. Is that what it is?
That's absolutely one way to do it. Another way to do it is to encourage employees to check out state and federal websites. The CDC has offered a lot of information on the vaccines, and by encouraging employees to go to legitimate sources of information, you can hopefully address and assuage many of people's concerns about the safety of the vaccine.
So when you talk about education, you're really talking about assuaging concerns. You're trying to identify the people who don't want to take a vaccine, who either work or might want to work in a restaurant or any company, and suggesting to them that maybe they should consider taking it, because taking it is, well, it's what the President Biden says. I mean, the government is not requiring you to take it, but there are a lot of good reasons, and he's encouraging everybody. It's sort of like masks, I guess. I went to Stroud this morning, and they said you can't come in without a mask. You cannot come in. Okay, is that the kind of thing we're talking about? Because I think masks and vaccines are similar, aren't they?
Well, certainly they're both tools to protect ourselves against the virus. As I mentioned earlier, employers are not, for the most part, making it mandatory. So there is no vaccine mandate, and there is no state or federal law requiring vaccines either. So mostly the most effective way is, instead of requiring it, is to encourage through education or incentives, to try to promote messaging, much like you mentioned, President Biden created messaging that sends a positive message that by getting vaccinated, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping your community.
Well, I mean, is that kind of advice or education that maybe change when you see the curve going up again? Because it's going up. There was something in the paper this morning. I mean, in fact, you see it everywhere. That the curve is going up. And that includes Hawaii for a lot of reasons. Some of them are around tourism or the reopening. The reopening has a predictable effect of enhancing the contagion. So I mean, does that advice change? Is that a factor in the education of employers or employees?
I don't think it changes the bottom line message that it's important to get vaccinated. What it might do is change the urgency behind the message. One of the things that Sheryl mentioned before we came on was that restaurants are really looking forward to how can we reopen safely. And by focusing on how we can reopen safely, one of the key messages, one of the key drivers in being able to reopen safely is having a critical mass of people vaccinated so that we move towards herd immunity.
Well, okay, I want to create a kind of case study. I'm a consumer, and in other times I was a big restaurant consumer. Now I've been sitting at home for a year, and I haven't gone to a restaurant in a year, and I have no immediate plans. Although the truth is, I have family coming to town later this spring, and they may force me to go to a restaurant. But they'll have to force me. Okay? So I haven't gone, and I otherwise don't plan to go to a restaurant because I'm waiting. It's like that line out of Marathon Man. Is it safe? And I've come to feel mixed feelings about government advice, and even for that matter, CDC advice about whether it's safe. Then when I see the curve going up, I'm less confident. And I got my shots too, but I know the shots last somewhere between 3 months and 6 months, and who knows exactly where they begin to fade in their efficacy. And I know that there are people out there who will be closer to me now because they think the whole thing is, over, which isn't true. And then I know there's, 35% of the electorate in this state is Republican and voted for Trump last time around, which is really sort of interesting in a democratic state. So my case study is, it's me. It's me. I want to feel safe. I want to go to restaurants. And if a restaurant can tell me, look, everybody here, has been vaccinated, I'm going to feel significantly safer than if they tell me, well, we believe that we can't force anybody, but we can hire them, or we cannot not hire them. We have to hire them, even if they haven't had a vaccine. And so you have a mixed bag staff near you and touching your food and so forth. If you want to come in, you have to bear that. Well, do you think I'm going to come in?
So is your question, are you going to come in if there's a mixed bag of employees, some who are vaccinated, some who aren't?
Yeah.
Certainly, I think it's a lot less appealing for a lot of people, which is why some restaurants and some businesses are advertising, we have fully vaccinated staff. And what the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has said is it's okay to ask your employees to show proof of a COVID-19 vaccination. And it's okay to say, hey, we are a fully vaccinated workforce at this restaurant. You have to be really careful about going beyond that, but it's okay to ask the simple question, are you vaccinated? That does not constitute medical examination under the EEOC's guidance.
I hope so. We have a crisis on our hands. I mean, they can talk about all these distracting news events and spend hours every day on cable news telling you about everything else. But the reality is we have a crisis and it's going up again. That's really terrifying. So, I mean, how do you deal with it? Suppose we had lots more cases. Suppose it shot right up. You think that it would be justified on the part of government to say, no, you really have to get a vaccine, or you don't have to hire anybody who doesn't have a vaccine? I mean, aren't we going to get to that?
That's a great question. I really don't know the answer, but what I do know is that the EEOC and other federal agencies have been very responsive during the pandemic. So as situations change, for example, the vaccine becomes available, you start to see updated guidance. And what I would recommend employers do who share your concerns about this rising curve is to regularly check the EEOC's guidance. One of the things the Hawaii Employers Council offers is a free resource. Employers can sign up for a weekly resource roundup, and we can tell you all of the latest guidance.
Well, that guidance may not be accurate. We talked before the show, and question is this a protected class? Are people who don't want to take vaccines a protected class? Because if you're a protected class, you may have rights and all that, but the protection has to be stated somewhere in the law. The EEOC does not have the authority to create a protected class. That's up to Congress, isn't it?
You're right. What the EEOC does is it authorizes or it explains and provides rules and guidance on what is already the law and how they're going to enforce the law. So what the EEOC's guidance has said in this respect is that people who have a sincerely held religious belief or a disability that means that they're not going to take the vaccine cannot really be forced by an employer to take the vaccine unless the employer establishes that this employee would pose a direct threat. And the direct threat is a high standard. Arguably, restaurants are an industry where people are working closely together and with a lot of different people, either in the front of the house or the back of the house. And I think that restaurants would have a better argument, certainly than many businesses, that an unvaccinated individual would pose a direct threat. But it is a high threshold to be able to establish that.
Well, I mean, it's pretty actually the whole thing is part of a restaurant or employer, package of solutions here. It seems to me that there's risk either way. In other words, suppose I go ahead and I listen to this person who has this kind of vague claim, can't get a vaccine. We can go through the kinds of claims that might come up. And so I say, okay, I'm not going to fight with you, and the EOC is mixed on this, and so I'll hire you. Okay. Chivon works right next to this person. Chivon catches COVID. Chivon says, "Gee whiz, I didn't know that you hired people who didn't have vaccines, and I firmly believe I got it, so I'm suing you."
That certainly is something employers are worried about. Our advice to employers who are having people in the workplace, and certainly that includes restaurants, is to protect themselves against lawsuits as best as possible by following all of the federally and state recommended and mandated protocols. So, any lawsuit is not going to get as much traction as it otherwise would if the restaurant can show we followed all of the CDC guidance, we followed all of the state and local rules. And by doing that, it really shows that you are committed to creating a safe working environment.
Well, are there rules really that require you to hire somebody who says, look, I have a philosophical objection to vaccines?
Are there rules required? No, you don't have to hire someone per se if they have a philosophical objection. Although if it's a religious philosophical objection, you're getting into the territory of people who are protected class.
Okay, but now suppose the person is on my staff now. I'm sure there's a lot of cases like this on my staff now, and seen the whole COVID experience through for a year. And now we come to vaccines, and the person says, I got philosophical objections, I got religious objections, I have political objections, or I just don't feel right about it. I don't think it's going to work on me. I mean, any number of half a dozen possibilities. And the employer is faced with making a very qualitative decision. It's not black and white. And you have to, believe the person. You have to believe the reason the person's giving you, and it could be pretty vague, or it could be a tall story too. And the employer has to make a decision about that. Is the employer qualified? Can the employer come to the Hawaii Employers Council and get advice about whether a given resistance by a given existing employee is legit? What does the employer do? How does the employer make that decision?
Those are really good questions, and our members are definitely asking that of the Hawaii Employers Council. You gave a lot of different scenarios, and the guidance that we would give really depends on the scenario. So one of the scenarios you gave, for example, was a religious objection. And you're right, sometimes people may invoke a religious objection, belief that is not sincerely held. But the EEOC has cautioned employers against being too aggressive as to how they look into or verify an employee's story unless they have tangible proof that this employee is not a part of this religion. Employers are generally being encouraged by the EEOC to be a little bit hands off. That is the safer path for employers. With regard to some of your other objections, they don't have the same protection. So really what the EEOC is offering is carve-outs are the disability and the sincerely held religious belief.
Chivon, what do you want to add to this? Speak for the restaurants.
Well, I mean, I think everybody out there wants to, just like yourself, wants to know wherever they go, restaurants, any business that they go to is going to be safe. So, we've had the discussion too of, is it the employer's job to educate them as far as instances where they say, "Oh, I'm gonna grow a third arm," or "There's not enough testing." Is that the employer's job then to also educate them as far as what is this vaccine and how is it going to work and what's the statistics on it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can question modern science. We know presidents who have done that. Sheryl, where are we on this? I mean, you're in a spot, aren't you? Do you belong to the Employers Council? Do your members belong? What other organizations are out there that we can approach? Or do we have to go get a lawyer who charges $9,000 an hour to answer the question? What do you think?
Well, I know for a fact that some of our restaurateurs are members of the Hawaii Employers Council, and mutual friends of mine are also parts of the Hawaii Employers Council. They provide such a great service of advice, as just like we're talking right now. Jay, this is how do you say, like territory that we've never gone to before. So
All of COVID seems to present that way.
exactly. And so as my restaurateurs, all they're trying to do today is create a safe environment so patrons and guests can come back. And as they're going now through the vaccines, which we've now been, you know, we've been being vaccinated now since what was it, January, and majority of my restaurants are already vaccinated. And as they speak to their employees, they just need to have the right, literature, the right educational piece to educate the employees, to let them know that, the vaccine is safe to take. And right now we're looking at creating a safer environment. As you mentioned, our numbers are really high right now. They've been talking about, tier two, and luckily Mayor Blangiardi says we're not going to go back to a tier two. We're going to probably, you know, adjust the tiers. But all we're trying to do
That's an interesting way of handling it.
right? And so all we're trying to do is create a more educated space for our employees so that they can make an educated decision.
But, Cheryl, we've had a number of shows through COVID, and it's really been great to, sort of track it with you and meet all these restaurateurs. Emily, we've been talking to restaurateurs from all sides of the restaurant community. And we've talked to guys who are about to go bankrupt,
Mhm.
who were scraping the bottom of their personal account, or living on credit card. I mean, using credit cards to run the restaurant. And they, they're in crisis. They're about to lose not only the restaurant, but their whole life, all their savings, and how you put money into a restaurant. You keep on putting money. So, at the same time, we've also talked to a number of restaurateurs who are really nice people. They care about their employees. They want to do the right thing. They always want to do the best human resources they can possibly do, and I give them great credit. I give you great credit for supporting that and urging them to be that way. But a lot of this is going to be survival, survival, and the safety branding is survival. And I'm not sure what they can do or will do when they run into a problem. It's really pretty serious, because their competitor would love to say, "Hey, that restaurant down the street? They don't have vaccines over there." Whoa, is that against the law? It's unfair competition.
Yeah, that gets into a different area of law than employment law. But absolutely, that would be a difficult situation for a restaurant.
Yeah. So, I mean, I worry that these guys are, in fact, in crisis still. They're still, there's a lot of people just like me. I haven't been spending money during COVID because I haven't been going out, right? I'm ready to go out. I have an avalanche waiting to roll in on the restaurant community. I'm waiting to spend 7 days a week at restaurants. It's pent up desire and pent up money. I would love to take my wife out every meal. And the restaurants know this. They have got to make a path. You have got to make a path for me so I can go out there. And I'm not alone. Believe me, I'm not alone. Our friends, just like that. So, I mean, this is a very tough issue. And it's a tough issue because it has been started to say that Emily, if you took those various categories of people who don't want to get vaccinated and made a pie chart, okay, out of every 100 people who don't want to get vaccinated, it would be a very interesting experience. And I would guess that a lot of them are in that 35% who voted for Donald Trump. That it is a political thing, just like masks are a political thing. And so, this is very troubling that it should happen in Hawaii. Because Hawaii is a place where we respect each other and we're very considerate of each other, and we want to make and all that. But I'm afraid this is an issue just beginning, don't you think? Don't you agree, Emily, that this is going to get more accentuated, more emphasized as we go forward? There's going to be more contention on both sides of it. What do you think?
Well, I definitely think this will continue to be a salient issue because, like you said, we don't know yet how long vaccines will be effective once you take them. And certainly, as the mutations of the coronavirus continue to emerge, it's going to continue to be a hot topic, unfortunately, likely for years to come.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we do have a question from a viewer, and I always appreciate that. The question is, let's see, this is for all of you. When everyone gets vaccinated, make that assumption, how soon can we get rid of masks in restaurants? Because there's a real issue about masks too. Anybody want to? Chivon, how about you? What do we do with masks after we finish, if we ever finish with vaccine?
I think masks will be here to stay for a little while. I just think it's until we can figure out all these mutations and everything else. I think they're here to stay for a little while. I think we're going to be like a lot of, Asian countries where it's just kind of the norm to now see people out and about and for it to be somewhat required.
Cheryl?
I feel that especially if you have an immune system that may be weakened because of an underlying condition, you need to wear a mask to protect yourself. That's why you're wearing a mask. And so I feel as though when the vaccines roll out, and as Emily said, all the mutations and everything is under control, it's all by stats. Because, Jay, I'm a stat person, right? I need to see the numbers. It's just like flus. We have stats on flus, how many people pass away from the flu per year. Well, this year our flu stats were low because everybody's wearing masks.
Oh,
It kind
true, totally true. And they're not shaking hands,
exactly. We're
and
not.
they're distancing.
Yep, we're
So,
not.
are you saying that we're going to continue all those things too? It's not just masks, it's distancing and touching and so forth?
Yep, in Hawaii, it's so, natural for us to want to hug each other and welcome each other. It's just that's just how we are. I'm thinking more people are going to be more conscious of shaking hands, hugging each other until we see the stats. Now, once we see those stats get to a level of comfort, Jay, I think then you'll see masks come off, people more freely, shaking hands. And
We're not there yet. We're
we're
definitely
not
not
there
there
yet.
yet.
We're not
So,
there yet.
Emily, I have an abiding question for you. So this restaurants, there's a huge industry here, and it's tagged onto the hospitality, hotel industry, travel, lodging, what have you. But there are other kinds of employers. I don't want to tell you anything you don't know. And we have to take care of them. They're mom and pops, they're medium sized, they're big, and all that. Is your view of this the same or different for other types of employers?
It's a good question, Jay. I think it's helpful for employers across the spectrum, whether they're restaurant owners or mom and pop shops, as you said, to really be involved in communicating and educating their workforce about vaccinations. I think it benefits everyone.
Well, we according to what the president, we should be finished by what, May or June. We should at least make it available to everybody in the country, and maybe we achieve, by vaccination, herd immunity. And the wild card, well, there's two wild cards, as you mentioned, Emily. One is the variants, because they could change that. You could be immune to one variant but not another. That's a very frightening thought. And the other is, the wild card is that we just keep on breathing on each other, and we don't take vaccines, and so that it keeps on going. So as Emily said earlier, this is an issue that's going to continue, and could get worse. And I think we agree that the law is not settled on this, either at the federal level or the state level, or in practice. And people, they don't know. What will have to happen, Emily, before we have some solid guidance, and call it legal guidance, instead of trying to figure out what the existing law does in circumstances for which it was not designed? What would we have to see to know for sure what to do?
Well, right now we do have pretty solid guidance in the form of vaccination specific guidance from the EEOC. But certainly a lot of people are concerned about being a possible test case. And so once we have this play out in the court system, we'll likely have a lot clearer guidance as to what it is exactly under a specific tax scenario that will pass muster.
Do you think there's going to be a move in the state legislature about this?
About masks? I'm sorry, about vaccines?
No, to either require vaccines or not require them, or specify liability or no liability for people who don't want to hire non-vaccinated people or anything.
That's a good question. There were some COVID specific laws introduced this session, but none of them on that front continue to be alive in the current session.
Very interesting. Are you having programs and panel programs and webinars about this for your membership?
Yes,
Absolutely.
us too, Jay. We just want to keep our members, just like the Hawaii Employers Council, educated, right? And making an educated decision.
Well, and we whatever our view of it is today, there are so many variables that might change that. Could get worse. We could learn more about how it works. We could learn more about the variants. I mean, the science has not been able to keep up with this because it's so fast moving. Look at the testing that has to go on before a particular therapeutic or vaccine is approved. And by the way, therapeutics is another interesting thing. I don't think it fits in the restaurant scenario very well, but there are therapeutics now that are amazing.
Right.
And there's one that was recently rolled out in Canada, which is like 99% effective. It's a nasal spray, and it stops COVID in its tracks. You're done. You're finished. Stops the disease right there. It's quite remarkable. And I think there'll be more like that. Not only the monoclonal antibodies, other things as well. It's another factor that plays in. So we're not done with our adventure. As somebody suggested here, it's an adventure that's likely to last for significantly longer time. So what about you? Let me make a wild guess and say you're a millennial, Chivon. And I take it also that you have not been vaccinated yet.
I have actually been vaccinated.
Oh, you're an essential worker.
I
All right, okay.
get my second one soon. So yes, I am going to be vaccinated.
Yeah. How do you feel about this? This is so far, it's taken a year out of all of our lives. How do you feel about it going forward?
I actually had hesitations with the vaccine, only because I just felt like it came out so quickly and, there's research, but there's not enough, years behind the research. It's not like when we were kids, a lot of these vaccines have been out for years. But I was hesitant, but at the same time, I would rather do what I have to do to protect myself. It's like so many other things in this world. We don't necessarily have all the answers to it, but you do what you have to make sure that for your own personal sake, you feel safe. So that was one of my thoughts on it was, well, I'm going to do what I need to do. And hopefully, right, if we can all do this and kind of take care of it, we'll all be able to go back to normal someday. I think that's what we're all really hoping for, whatever normal is.
When this first happened, Emily, I had the impression that our Hawaii community was in it together. Everybody said that. We were in it together. We're going to work this out together. Everybody trying to find a way to join a community of people who wanted to save our society. At the moment, though, it seems to be a little bit less community than that, because there are people who have taken advantage. Let scammers down, talk to the Better Business Bureau, really. And there's all kinds of people who take advantage of it. And then I must say there have been lawsuits about things. And if you worry about lawsuits in restaurants, what about in hotels in general? Whoa, the same issues that we're talking about today. One of your other employers, I would say, must be big hotels, little hotels all around the community. I'm not sure that I feel that the same sense of togetherness still exists about everybody cooperating and trying to help the next guy. What do you think, Emily?
I'm sorry to hear that, Jay. I think it really depends on your perspective and your exposure. And I feel very fortunate that in communications with our members, everyone's really looking for the same goal, which is Chivon said, is kind of to get back to normal and working together on that front.
Well, Cheryl, you've been at the center of the hotel industry, and you've seen a lot of good hotel, or rather restaurant industry. You've seen a lot of restaurateurs go into panic over this, and some of them fail. Where are you, and how would you summarize our discussion relative to the restaurant industry?
The
This is
restaurant,
a hard one. I'm not saying it's not hard.
it's difficult. The restaurants, like you said, a lot of them, even though we've had an uptick in visitors this last couple of weeks, Jay, it didn't take away a whole year of lost sales, of down sales, of shuttered dining rooms. So the restaurants, right now they're trying to do the right thing, Jay, by encouraging their employees to take the vaccine, to be protecting themselves and their patron. They're trying to create that safe dining experience. So to me, the restaurants are still all banding together. That's the reason why I'm here on this channel. Chivon and I daily speak to all the restaurateurs, and they're trying to do the right thing, Jay, by ensuring the patrons that their environment is safe. Wear your mask, practice the distancing. We're sanitizing. We have the highest standards, based by the CDC, the FDA. So we're doing everything we can to create that safe environment so that people like you can feel comfortable coming back to our dining room.
I'm ready. Okay, Emily, can you give us parting words? What are your thoughts that you would like to impart to our viewers?
Well, I would certainly encourage people who are looking for guidance on how to educate their workforce or what kind of messages to send to check out our website and look into the Hawaii Employers Council's resources.
Yes, absolutely. This is a time when we have to reopen and
Yes.
smart
Yes.
and considerate of everyone around us.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And Chivon, thank you for joining us. And of course, Cheryl, thank you for joining us. Always appreciate these discussions. They're a window on
Yes.
the economy. They're a window on reopening, which is so important to our future.